Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 9 articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially from the perspective of UPSC Civil Service Examination. In the first article, we'll talk about the challenges and the way forward with respect to the urban local bodies in India. In the second topic, we'll talk about the meaning and importance of parliamentary privileges. In the third article, we'll talk about the very important project Cheetah. In the fourth article, we'll talk about the Totaliser mechanisms in the Indian election. In the fifth article, we'll talk about the National Population Register. Finally, in the prelim snippet section, we'll have a look at some of the very important topics for the preliminary exam. So coming to the very first article, it is with respect to the urban local bodies. So we all know that the 16th Finance Commission has already been instituted. Now, there is one of the sub-clauses in Article 280 of the Indian Constitution, which actually mandate the Finance Commission to recommend measures so as to augment the consolidated fund of different states, so as to help the panchayat and the municipalities with adequate funds, right? Thus, this issue of urban local bodies in particular becomes very important. So we'll look what are the issues with respect to the urban local bodies in India and what can be the way forward. Now, this is with respect to GS2, devolution of powers and finances up to the local levels. Now, see, talking about urbanization in general. What is urbanization? See, urbanization is the gradual shift of people from the rural to the urban areas. So that it actually increases the proportion of people living in the urban areas. That is what we call the process of urbanization. Now see, the urbanization in India, what we have seen, especially in the last 2 decades, is that there has been unprecedented rate of urbanization in India. Now, according to the United Nations Population Fund Agency, UNFPA, what we see is that the urban population in India, it was 44% in 2023. The proportion of the urban population out of the total population was 44%. And it is projected that this proportion would go to 54% in the year 2030. And by the year 2050, we'll have 68% of the total population as living in the urban areas in the year 2050. Percentage of total population, right? And this is the timeline. Now, this is according to the United Nations Population Fund Agency. This is the quantum or the magnitude of the urbanization in India. Now, see, also we have got data by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, that is UNDESA. So it also gives the amount of or the transformation which we are witnessing in the urbanization in India. So it says that now this data is of 2018. So just keep this in mind. It says that there are 461 million people who are living in cities. Then 2 to 3% is the annual urban population growth. Then 42% of the urban population lives in smaller cities with less than 3 lakh inhabitants. Then 75% of India's national income is expected to come from the cities by 2031. Then 70 to 80% of the urban infrastructure, now this is very important, that will exist in 2050 has yet to be built. Right? So we require a lot of resources for the urban infrastructure. Then it says the amount of the money required, it is around $827 billion. It is the estimated gap in the urban infrastructure investment over the next 20 years. So this is the information with respect to the urbanization in India. Now, considering all these data points, also the United Nations Population Fund Agency data which I gave you, it becomes really important to position Indian cities in such a way that they emerge as the real drivers of the transformation of the Indian economy, right? So they should emerge as the real drivers of this transformation of the whole Indian economy. We are also having a target to have, Indian economy cross $5 trillion in some years and then $10 trillion in some years. So the urban infrastructure is really important. Also, according to the National Commission on Urbanization, so it's actually says that cities are the engines of growth. So it says that the cities are engines of growth, right? So these words actually become important once you actually write your answer in the mains. Now, considering all these points, what we see is that the urban local bodies, that is those institutions which are responsible for managing the governance in the local areas, in the localized areas, that becomes really important, right? So we need to have robust urban local bodies in place. Now, if you look at the historical background of urban local bodies in India, what we see is that even in the ancient India, So we all know that we had the existence of Mahajanpadas. So even at that time, we had the institutions of local bodies, and they were given the task to manage local affairs. Let's say to maintain the order, let's say to regulate the trade, to make sure that the drainage is being properly run, right? So that is what the tasks of these local bodies were. Then what we saw in the British era was the institutionalization of the local self-government, right? And what the Britishers did was that for the urban local governance, they started this municipal councils. So municipal councils were instituted, and elected people used to then have this urban governance. They used to make laws, they used to make sub-laws, bylaws, and then they used to rule that particular territory or govern that particular territory. Now, can you just tell me who is regarded as the father of local self-government in India? Let me see who answers first in the comment section. Right. Now, what we see post-independence was that India continued the system of local self-government at different places. But it was in the year 1992, through the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, that we finally recognized this third tier of governance. And we actually, through the constitution, made some of the provisions which allowed that these urban bodies should be having some of the powers and authorities, and they should be endowed with such authorities by the respective state governments, so that we can have a proper architecture in place, proper government architecture in place, right? Governance architecture in place. Now, at present, if we see these urban local bodies, they are actually tasked with multifaceted functions when it comes to the planning and development, when it comes to executing sustainable growth, when it comes to making different plans for transportation, the water supply, the solid waste management. Different domains are being catered by them, right? So that is the reason that urban local bodies become really important. Now, talking about the structure of urban local bodies in India. See, we don't have a uniform structure there. Depending upon the need of a particular place, we have got different urban local bodies in India. For example, the first is the municipal corporations. Now, these are the bodies which are instituted for a place having a population of more than 1 million, right? So these are generally instituted in places like in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, right? Then we have got municipal councils. These are the institutions which are tasked in those places where the population is less than 1 million, right? So it is for the smaller areas. Then the Nagar Panchayat, it is for even smaller areas. That is the population where the population is less than 1 lakh, right? So it is for those places to manage the drainage, to manage the water supply and other things. We have got the institution of Nagar Panchayat. Then we have got town area committees. See, these town area committees, these are having minimal authority, right? And these are tasked with very specific functions for a particular very small town. That is the reason we have got the town area committee. Then we have got the notified area committee. See, these notified area committee, these are specially instituted for those places where you have got fast growing towns or where the towns need the basic amenities, right? Now, all the members of this town area committee, they are nominated by the state government. Then you have got the Port Trust. Port Trust is basically an authority to manage the affairs of areas which lie around the ports, right? So that is where the Port Trust work. Then we have got the Special Purpose Agency. See, especially after 2014, we had the prominence or the importance given to the Special Purpose Agency. For example, you must be aware that we have got the institutions of Special Purpose Vehicle in the Smart Cities Mission. Right. So these bodies are actually tasked with specific defined functions in order to carry out in that particular urban area. So that is why we call special purpose agency. So these are some of the types of the urban local bodies in India. Now, coming to the significance of urban local bodies in India. Now, first is the urban planning and development. See, these urban local bodies, they're very crucial for actually land use planning, for making policies on land use planning, for infrastructure development, right? Making sure that we have got proper policies in place in order to make sure that development is sustainable, right? So they have got a lot of powers or you can say a lot of domain in order to ensure sustainable urban governance, right? Then next is the service delivery. See, urban local bodies in India, they are tasked with some of the very important functions. They are given the task to manage the solid waste management, to provide the drainage, to make sure that we have got proper roads in cities, to make sure that we have got proper transportation services. So these are the wide domain of services which the urban local bodies provide. Then disaster and pandemic management. See, especially after the COVID-19 crisis, the importance of urban local bodies has come into prominence, especially with regards to the disaster and the pandemic management. So they actually develop those policies and those mechanisms so as to mitigate the effects of these disasters, right? For example, we have got the BMC, Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation. This was at the front line when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic management, or this was even at the front line when it comes to the flood management, the flood-like situations in the Mumbai, right? Then it also strives for the empowerment of the women and the marginalized groups. See, please understand that these we have got 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, right? Now, both these mandate the reservation of women. Both these mandate the reservation of marginalized section. Now, once you have got the marginalized section or the women participating in the decision-making process, then it naturally empowers them, right? So it has actually indirectly empowered these people. Then we have got community participation. See, these local bodies, they hold a different sort of public consultations. They have got proper platforms for public consultations, and thus it actually gives a voice to the community. The community then actually tells these urban local bodies that we have got these problems, so their view becomes important in the overall developmental framework, right? So this is why what we say that the urban local bodies are very important. Now, coming to the challenges faced by the urban local bodies in India. See, first is the functional challenges. See, there are parastatal agencies. Now, the first point is, what do we mean by parastatal agencies? See, there are some bodies, there are some institutions which are created by the state government, right, for specific tasks. Let's say we have got for the water supply in some areas, the Jal boards, right? So we have got the Jal boards in different areas. Now, the problem with these parastatal bodies is that they encroach upon the domain of the municipalities, the urban local bodies. They encroach upon their domain, and ultimately the functional autonomy of these urban local bodies, it suffers, right? So that is one issue. Also, the 13th Finance Commission has categorically said that these parastatal bodies have emasculated these urban local bodies when it comes to the operational and financial autonomy of these urban local bodies, right? So they have emasculated the urban local bodies. Now, next is improper devolution of functions. See, please understand that we have got, ultimately it is the state government which devolves the power and authorities to these urban local bodies. But what we see is that in most of the cases, the state governments have been reluctant to transfer the power and authorities to these urban local bodies. So naturally they suffer. Next is lack of constitution of district planning committees. See, the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, it mandates the formulation, the sort of institution of district planning committee. Now, what is the work of district planning committee? See, we have got panchayats, different panchayats, we have got municipalities. Now, they have their own plans. They submit the plans to the district planning committee. So the work of the district planning committee is to consolidate all the plans from the panchayat, from the municipalities, and come with a comprehensive plan, right? But what we have seen is that in many cases, there is sort of no institution of district planning committee. And even in those places where you have these district planning committees, they have been made powerless, right? So these are the functional challenges which we have. Now, coming to the funding related challenges, that is the finances. See, please understand that the focus of this article, which we just started, is with respect to the financial aspects, right? So it has only catered to the financial aspects. So the highlights of the article when it comes to the finances are as given below. First, it says that cities contribute, when it comes to the contribution made by the cities, it is 66% when it comes to India's GDP. Right. So cities contribute around 66% to India's overall GDP. Then it gives a very good number. It says that almost 90% of the revenues which are earned by the government, they come from the cities. Almost 90%. Right. Next, it also gives a data when it comes to the infrastructure gaps which Indian cities have. It says that according to the World Bank, India has a deficit of around $840 billion. when it comes to providing basic urban infrastructure facilities, right? And in the next decade, so India would need at least minimum $840 billion. This is almost equivalent to $1 trillion. So India would need almost $1 trillion in the coming decade so as to provide the basic urban infrastructure facilities in the urban areas. Next is we talk about the intergovernmental transfers. Now, what are the intergovernmental transfers? Please understand. You have the urban local bodies, right? Now, the finances, the transfers which are made to the urban local bodies from the central government, from the state government, these are termed as intergovernmental transfers. Now, in India's case, the intergovernmental transfers is just 5% when you compare it with the other countries. For example, let's compare this with Mexico. So we have got the intergovernmental transfers, it's around 1.6% of the total GDP, right? Then we have got Denmark, 2.1%. As you go higher, we have got UK, where the intergovernmental transfer is 9.9% of the total GDP, right? So that is the, just see that we have got a very less amount when it comes to the intergovernmental transfers. Now, the shocking part is that even this 0.5% of the GDP, this forms the crucial 40% of the total resources of the revenues which urban local bodies have. Just 0.5% of the GDP, which is transferred from the center and the states to the urban local bodies. And this too is something which is 40%. It makes up the total 40% of the revenues of the urban local bodies, right? Next is, so you can also refer to this image. Now, this gives you a very good information when it comes to the reliance of these municipalities on these transfers by the state government or the central government. Just see, in the year 1960-61, we had got the total, only 10.9% of the total sources was transferred from the center and the state. But when it comes to 2019-20, this share has come to 35.7. So more and more these urban local bodies, they are relying on the central and the state government for adequate resources. Now, next, the article talks about the effect of GST. It says that the institutionalization of GST has made problems had given rise to a lot of problems for the urban areas. It says that in the year 2013, the share of the total tax revenues, excluding the property tax, it was 23%. But after the institutionalization of the GST in the year 2018, it has reduced to just 9%. So the author is actually trying to say that the institutionalization of the mechanism of GST has not fared good for these urban local bodies. Now, these are the issues with respect to what the article has pointed out. Now, let's talk about some of the other challenges. Next challenge is that there is the incapacity when it comes to raising the direct finances. So according to the economic survey of 2018, it categorically very clearly says that the urban local bodies in India, they have actually failed to realize the potential of their property tax, right? So what we see in China, that the property tax, the share of the revenues which the urban local bodies in China get out of the property tax, it's around 20 to 22% of the total revenues. But in India, this number is around 10 to 11%. So we are not actually using this taxation powers when it comes to even the property tax. Next is narrow taxation powers. See, we only have few of the domains when it comes to employing these domains for generating revenues. That is, for example, let's say the property tax, right? But when it comes to the other domains, Indian urban local bodies have narrow taxation powers. Right? They don't have the capacity to impose tax because that power has not been devolved either from the central government or the state governments, right? For example, take the case of Denmark. So in Denmark, the urban local bodies have the power to impose the local personal income tax, right? So they can impose the local personal income tax. Similarly, in countries like we have got the USA or the UK, what we see is that the urban local bodies there, they have got wide-ranging taxation powers. That is the reason that they are able to sum up a huge financial resources, right? Next is lack of timely constitution of State Finance Commission. See, the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, it inserted a particular article, and that was 243I. Now, this article mandates the institutionalization of the State Finance Commission. But what we see is that many of the states have not sort of institutionalized the State Finance Commission. And even when you have the formation of the State Finance Commission, they have not been given the proper terms of reference, right? So that has been laggard. The formation of the State Finance Commission has been laggard, and even if they give the recommendations, those recommendations are not followed. Next is with respect to the functionaries challenges. See, what are the challenges with respect to the functionaries? First is delays in the conduction of elections to the urban local bodies. There have been cases, and even for the large municipal corporations like Bangalore or Chennai, where the elections have been arbitrarily delayed, right, without a reason. Next is criminalization of the urban local bodies. There has been, like what we see in the parliament, there has been an increased criminalization when it comes to the corporators. The corporators which are actually entering the urban local bodies, they are having a lot of criminal charges. Next is corporator pati syndrome. See, we have this problem of Panchayat Pati syndrome when it comes to the rural governance, the rural local self-government institutions. Similarly, what we are witnessing is that we have got this syndrome of corporator Pati. What happens is that the authority of the elected women representatives, that is actually being exercised by their husbands, right? So this is not right. Next, we have got bureaucratic control. Even for the corporations which are very rich, it has been seen that it is being run by the municipal commissioners, and the mayors or other elected representatives, they are just being ceremonial, they're just having ceremonial positions. Next is lack of staff. There is sort of a very bad state of affairs when it comes to the staff, skilled staff, right? So according to our data, around 35% of the staff in the urban local bodies in India, there is a shortage of around 35% of the total staff. Now, what are the functionality challenges? See, first is that it has been seen that the urban local bodies in India, they have failed in ensuring the planned urbanization. Why? For a planned urbanization, you need master plans, and many of these urban local bodies, and that too in big cities, for example Delhi, Mumbai or Chennai, Bangalore, they have failed to prepare the timely master plans, right? And if you don't have a timely master plan, it results into sort of a haphazard development, right, where you see a lot of slums, you see traffic congestions, right, unsustainable growth. That is because of lack of master plans. Then you have got the issue of corruption. There have been several instances where you have scandals involving corruption. Moreover, there has been a lack of transparency when it comes to the public procurement processes, when it comes to the allotting tenders, when it comes to the urban governance. Then we have got lack of coordination. See, urban governance, sometimes it requires proper coordination with the center government, with the state government, with different various departments. But there has been a very bad state of affairs when it comes to the proper coordination among the different organs of the state. Now, what should be the way forward to improve the urban local bodies functioning in India? See, we have got the 6th report of the second ARC. Right. Now, the 6th report of the second ARC, it focuses upon the urban governance. So it has some of the recommendations. It says, first is the constitution of metropolitan planning committees, so that we can develop proper plans. We can have robust plans for the areas, which include the recommendations given by the panchayats, the different municipalities, right? We need to have the institutionalization of municipal metropolitan planning committees. Then we have got the establishment of unified metropolitan transport authority, so as to ensure that we have got proper transportation management systems in place, so that we don't see that traffic congestions. We have got proper traffic management. Then we need to strengthen the ULBs, urban local bodies. That is by conducting proper elections, timely elections, by making sure that adequate resources are transferred from the center, from the states to these urban local bodies. Then we have got the creation of National Urban Development and Housing Finance Corporation. Now, this would be responsible for providing adequate finances for the housing projects, for making sure that you have got enough resources when it comes to affordable housing. Then is the implementation of PPP and e-governance. See, private sector definitely has a lot of expertise, right? So we need to leverage that particular expertise. Also, we can leverage the financial resources which private sector has. So next is the e-governance. We need to institutionalize e-governance models so as to enhance the transparency in the working of the urban governance. Next is the Niti Aayog's recommendation. So Niti Aayog has given a recommendation when it says that there needs to be an improvement in the financial management of the urban local bodies. It says that adequate resources must be transferred so as to make sure that these urban local bodies can have their own developmental progress, right? It also says that there needs to be timely institutionalization of State Finance Commission, and their recommendations should be actually adhered to. Then capacity building, very important. What is needed is that we have got these urban planners or the government officials properly trained. There needs to be proper mechanisms. For example, we have got the mission Karmyogi. So on similar lines, we can have a capacity building mechanism for these urban planners and government officials. Then we need to strengthen the citizen participation. See, please, what we need to understand is that we need to have the citizens in the decision making process. How we can do so? We can do so by incorporating the views of civil society organizations, by incorporating the different NGOs in the decision making process of that particular urban local bodies. So what we see is definitely there are a lot of issues when it comes to urban local bodies, but we need to have a multi-pronged approach so that we can realize the idea of grassroots democracy. See, please understand, if we don't have grassroots democracy, we will not be able to idealize the idea of a developed India, right? So we need to have proper implementation of different schemes. We need to have proper devolution of powers, finances to these urban local bodies so that we can have a very robust urban local bodies framework. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have got a previous year's question from 2017. And the question is, local self-government can be best explained as an exercise in federalism, democratic decentralization, administrative delegation, and direct democracy. Let me see who answers first. Also, in order to emphasize the importance of this topic, I have mentioned here one of the previous year's questions from 2013. Now it says, discuss the recommendations of the 13th Finance Commission, which have been a departure from the previous commissions for strengthening the local government finances. Now this is the reason what I'm saying is that this topic becomes really important, especially for your mains. Now coming to the next article, it is about the parliamentary privileges. So what we saw was that in his first address, the first address by the leader of opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, so he has alleged that his mic was actually deliberately turned off. Now this gives rise to a very important concept, and that is the breach of privilege. Now this is with respect to GS2, Parliament and State Legislature, structure and functioning, right? So let's first talk about what is parliamentary privilege. So see, these are the special rights, immunities and the exemptions, which are the rights entitled to the House, its members and its committees. And this enables the members to actually discharge their duties and functions without fear or interference, right? So that is the reason that parliamentary privileges become very important. Now, let me ask you a question. See, we have got the first as ministers, right? We have got second, the Attorney General of India, and we have the President of India, right? Can you just tell me that which among them does not enjoy the parliamentary privileges? So there are two entities in these three which enjoy the parliamentary privileges, but there is one entity, one office which actually does not enjoy the parliamentary privileges. Let me see who answers in the comment section. Now, talking about the origin of parliamentary privileges in India. See, initially, with the commencement of the Constitution, we had the Article 105 in the Indian Constitution. Now, it explicitly provided for two parliamentary privileges. That is, to have the freedom of speech in the Parliament and to publish its reports. Now, also we have got another article, Article 122, which actually prohibit the courts to inquire into the proceedings of the House. Now, these are the explicit provisions which provide for the parliamentary privileges. Also, we have got Article 194 and 212, which deal with the similar provisions at the state level. Now, with regards to the other privileges which the members are entitled to, what the Constitution actually said, that when it comes to the other privileges, initially what the Constitution said, that it would be same as those of the British House of Commons. So what the privileges are available in the British House of Commons to its members, to its committees, those privileges would be applied in a similar way in India. Then we had this 44th Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 1978. Now, what it did was that it replaced this British House of Commons by saying that the parliamentary privileges would be the same as they were at the commencement of the Indian Constitution. So it actually made a verbal change, but significantly, it had no significant implication, right? Now, what needs to be kept in mind is that the Indian Parliament has not yet codified all these privileges. Now, it depends on the rules, the conventions, the parliamentary conventions, the chair of the House, who can interpret these parliamentary privileges as he or she likes to. Now, how are these privileges actually classified? See, we can classify these parliamentary privileges into two types. One is the individual privileges, that the individual member is entitled to. For example, having the freedom of speech and expression, right? Or he cannot be, a particular member cannot be arrested when you have a session 40 days before the session, 40 days after the session. Or then he is also exempted from the jury service from when you have got a session in place, right? So these are the individual privileges. Then you have got the collective privileges, which the House as a whole is entitled to. For example, it has the right to publish the reports. It has a right to make rules so that how the proceedings would be run. It has a right to punish those members or even the outsiders if there has been a sort of breach of privilege, right? So these are the collective privileges which the whole House collectively enjoys. Now, what is the significance of these parliamentary privileges? See, please understand that we have a representative democracy where we have got representatives elected, and those actually take the cause. They actually talk about the issues on the floor of the House. Right. So it becomes really important that if we need to have a proper discussion in the parliament, there needs to be adequate rights for these parliamentarians. So it ensures the independence and integrity of these parliamentarians. Next is the duties without fear or intimidation or interference. See, if the particular parliamentarians wants to convey about the executive, the arbitrariness of the executive, right? Or any inaction or action which is being committed by the government, by the executive. So he or she should be able to say it clearly on the floor of the House. That is where these parliamentary privileges play a role. Then we have got crucial to the decision-making process. So see, Parliament has a very important function to make laws. Now, those laws require deliberation. Constant deliberation, inputs from different sections of the society. So in order to reach to a consensus, to have a well-formed, informed decision, we need to have parliamentary privileges in place. Then it is important part on the checks and balance, as I've just said, that if we want that the parliamentarian or that the member of the parliament is able to convey what the government is doing, if the government is actually interfering arbitrarily, if the government is actually infringing the fundamental rights of the people, then the members of parliament are entitled to speak freely in the floor of the House, right? So that is where the significance of parliamentary privileges come. Now, what are the challenges when it comes to the parliamentary privileges in India? First is the scope of privileges. As I have already told, that there is the parliamentary privileges in India, they are not codified. We don't have a specific set of privileges which are actually, and which the members are actually entitled to. So it becomes really sort of confusing to actually determine the ambit of the privileges which these members are entitled to. Next is the conflict with the constitutional principles. See, we have got Article 14, right? That is equality before law and equal protection of laws. Now, it means that nobody can have privileges. But once we are giving the parliamentary privileges, it is actually in contradiction to Article 14. So we are treating parliamentarians differently than the normal citizens. That is one of the aspects. Then there have been cases of misuse of privileges. See, we understand that parliamentarians have freedom of speech and expression. But there have been instances where it has been found that these parliamentarians have involved themselves in offensive statements, in inflammatory statements, communal statements. So that is the reason there has been a misuse of privileges. Then there is lack of transparency. See, the whole process of actually enforcing these parliamentary privileges is actually not transparent. We don't know what the chair of the House can construe something as a breach of privilege or not, right? So that is where there are issues with respect to the transparency. Then there is inadequate oversight. Whatever can be construed as something as a breach of privilege, right? There is no proper mechanism. The power is with respect to the chair of the House. So that is where we have this issue with respect to the oversight mechanism. Now, as I said, what is a breach of parliamentary privilege? See, breach of parliamentary privilege is actually the violation of the rights and immunities of the parliament and its members. Now, it can actually involve the sort of obstruction in the duties of a particular member of parliament, or obstruction or interference in the working of the parliament. Now, this can involve disciplinary action. This can involve disciplinary action either against that particular member or even outsiders. So that is what we call as the breach of parliamentary privilege. Now, what have been the important judgments when it comes to parliamentary privileges? The first is the Supreme Court. It recently said that no parliamentary immunity for vandalism. It says, it's categorically said, the Supreme Court said that the parliamentarians cannot commit a criminal act and lie behind the cover that they have got the freedom of speech and expression. So they cannot commit a particular criminal act and then say that we have got the freedom of speech and expression. It cannot, it's not possible. Next, what Supreme Court highlighted in K. Anandan Nambiar case in 1951 is that it said that the members of parliament, they enjoy no higher status than an ordinary citizen of this country. So it categorically actually said that they should not think, the parliamentarians should not think that they can say or do anything in the garb of having that, saying that we have got parliamentary privileges. Then in the year 2021, in the state of Kerala versus K. Ajit, the Supreme Court said that these members of parliament, they cannot claim these exceptions. They cannot claim the exceptions saying that we have parliamentary privileges, right? So there needs to be courts have interfered time and again in order to make these parliamentarians realize that, see, you have got these parliamentary privileges for the effective functioning of the democracy. It should not be for your selfish or political gains. That is where we see that Supreme Court has intervened time and again. Now, how can these parliamentary privileges be used effectively? Now, we all know that definitely parliamentary privileges are very important. We already saw that this is the reason that parliamentary privileges are important. It enables a particular parliamentarian to express himself or herself freely on the floor of the House. So what should be done is that we need to use these privileges responsibly. What the members need to understand is that these are the rights for the people. Right, they are entitled to these rights because they are the representatives of the people. So they need to use it more responsibility. Then respect the rights of others. They should make sure that whatever they are saying is not inflammatory. Whatever they are saying is not communal. It should not lead to sort of tensions in the society, conflict in the society. Then it should be transparent. The process of enforcing or claiming these privileges should be very much transparent. There needs to be proper guidelines in place so that we can make sure that, yes, this is a breach of privilege and this is not a breach of privilege. Then we need to follow the parliamentary procedures. Whenever you are having a sort of a discussion with respect to whether a breach of privilege has taken place or not, there needs to be proper parliamentary procedures in place. There needs to be adequate deliberation. And once, if someone is found guilty, then adequate action has to be taken. What can be the learning is from the Australia and New Zealand. See, in the Australia, we have got a particular statutory law, which is the Parliamentary Privileges Act of 1987. And then in New Zealand, we have got the Parliamentary Privilege Act of 2014. Now, both these acts, they have clearly codified the parliamentary privileges which are actually which members are entitled to. So it maintains a clarity of thought when it comes to the implementation of these privileges. Also, the courts can review the privileges of the House, right? And also the Parliament, the Parliament, the lawmaking body, it can also alter, it can have amendments in these acts according to the need of the time, right? So what we see is definitely parliamentary privileges are very important, but we need to make sure that these parliamentary privileges are not used for political gains, for selfish gains. These are used for the interests of the people at large, for the overall functioning, well-functioning of the democracy. Now, before we go to the next topic, we have got a 2014 previous year's question paper. So in this question, we have the powers, privileges and immunities of the Parliament and its members as envisaged in Article 105 of the Constitution leave room for a large number of uncodified, unenumerated privileges to continue. Assess the reason for the absence of legal codification of the parliamentary privileges. How can this problem be addressed? Then we have got a prelims question which says one of the implications of equality in the society is the absence of privileges, restraints, competition, ideology. So just answer this question in the comment section. So the next article is with respect to Project Cheetah. So what we have seen is that there has been a drastic reduction in the number of cheetah population in the Kuru National Park. Now we all know that Kuru National Park is a place which was selected for the cheetah reintroduction, and we also have leopards in this particular place. So what has been said is that it is the leopards who are actually responsible for the drastic reduction in their prey base, and the prey base is cheetah population, right? So we'll see what Project Cheetah is all about and what are the different aspects of that particular project. Now this is with respect to GS3, environment and conservation. Now talking about the Project Cheetah. So this is the world's first intercontinental the large wild carnivore translocation project. Now, this actually included the reintroduction of cheetahs from two countries in Africa. That is, one is South Africa and one is Namibia. So we had the reintroduction of these cheetahs from these two countries. Now, if we go into the historical timeline, to see, first let's talk about the facts with respect to cheetah. So it is the oldest of the big cat species, and its ancestors can be traced back to around 8.5 million years. Number of cheetahs are just under 7,500 globally. Then IUCN's Red List recognizes cheetahs as vulnerable species. Then the Asiatic cheetah and the Northwest African cheetah are critically endangered. Cheetahs have lost 90% of their global habitat. They now live in 9% of their historical range. Now, this is just factual information which you need to be aware of. Now, coming to the historical timeline. See, we're talking about India. So it was in the Mughal period when the cheetahs were extensively used for hunting purposes, right? Then the area, the expanse of these cheetah was primarily the central India, in the states of the present states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, even some parts of Rajasthan, right? And we had this Gwalior region which had a lot of cheetahs, right? Now, the country's last spotted cheetah, it actually died in the Sal forests of Chhattisgarh, in the Korea district in 1948. Now, it was declared extinct in the year 1952. After it was declared extinct, there were plans to reintroduce cheetah, and it was in the years 1970s that we actually approached Iran. So there was a plan to exchange Asiatic lions for the Asiatic cheetahs. But finally, Iran did not agree on this, right? Then in the year 2012, what happened was that the Supreme Court, it actually ordered a stay on the reintroduction project, right? Then slowly, with time, what we saw, there were a lot of studies with respect to this reintroduction plan. And it was in the year 2020 that we had South African experts who visited 4 potential sites. Now, these 4 potential sites were the Kuno National Park, the Noradehi Wildlife Sanctuary, then we have got the Madhav National Park, and finally, Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. So these were the 4 potential areas which were identified by the government, and we had a lot of studies, and a lot of foreign experts came here and they studied. Finally, it was in the year 2022 that Project Cheetah was officially launched by the Prime Minister. So this is a brief sort of historical timeline with respect to cheetahs in India. Now, talking about the significance. Why is this project important? Why actually cheetahs are important? See, let's talk about at different fronts. First is the environmental significance. So in the environmental significance, we have got the biodiversity restoration. See, please understand that cheetahs are the top predator species, right? They are the top predator species. Now, once they're introduced, it leads to a sort of stability or the formulation of a strengthened grassland ecosystem. So you have got the top predators, right? So it leads to the formation of strengthened grassland ecosystem. Right. So that is what the benefit of the reintroduction is. Moreover, it has been found with the studies that once you introduce the cheetahs, it leads to other environmental services, ecosystem services. For example, water conservation or having soil moisture retention, right? So these are some of the ecosystem services which are provided. Then it also leads to the conservation efforts with respect to other species. See, if you have a successful model in place, successful model of cheetah reintroduction, that can also be applied to other species. For example, we have got the Great Indian Bustard, right? So adequate programs or adequate models can be implemented for these species too. Then ecological research opportunities. Different ecological scientists, once you have got this plan in place, they get an opportunity to discuss, to deliberate, to study about the ecology, about the existence of these cheetahs in that particular habitat, right? Then coming to the economic significance. See, please understand that with the reintroduction, what has happened is that more and more wildlife tourism is increasing, right? So it is obviously giving revenues to the states. Moreover, what we see is that there are new jobs, for example, cheetah mitras, right? So new jobs have been created so that it is also providing the sort of employment opportunities. Then we have got the other things that it is also providing ecotourism, right? So these are some of the economic aspects of this particular Project Cheetah. Next is the social significance. See, once you have got debates and discussion with respect to the reintroduction plan, whether it should be done or not, right? So what we see is that it increases the awareness of people, right? It increases the awareness of people with respect to the wildlife conservation. People are more aware about how the wildlife needs to be protected. Then socio-cultural significance. See, in Indian mythology, cheetahs have a very good place. So they are known for their agility and strength, right? So once you reintroduce these cheetahs, what happens is that you are actually giving importance to their cultural revival, right? So that is where the socio-cultural aspect is looked into. Now, what are the challenges when it comes to the Project Cheetah? See, the first is less protected area which is available. Cheetahs are low density species. What it means is that one or two cheetahs, it requires around 100 square kilometers. Right, so it requires around 100 square kilometers, and for a lot of cheetahs you need a large area. Now this is not possible in countries like India, so it creates sort of tough conditions for the cheetahs itself, right? Next is less prey availability. We already saw the context of the article is that there has been a drastic reduction in the prey base, right? So it is reducing the prey base because you already have leopards, you have tigers, so that is reducing the prey base. Next is, compared to the tigers and compared to the leopards, cheetahs are fragile. It means that they are more prone to injuries. That is the reason you also saw that there was the death of a cheetah, primarily because of the kidney failure, right? So they are fragile creatures. Next is climate change impacts. Climate change has been affecting the habitat and the prey population, right? So that is obviously having an indirect effect on the cheetahs as well. Interspecies competition. See, what the research has told is that from the Kuno National Park, around 140 kilometers away, you have got the Ranthambore National Park. Right. Now, from these Ranthambore National Park, sometimes what happens is that the tigers come to the Kuno National Park, and it then again leads to the species competition. That is the prey-based competition, right? So that is one of the aspects. Next is the genetic differences. India was home to the Asiatic cheetahs. But we have introduced the African cheetahs, right? So there have been some commentators, scientific commentators, who are saying that this is not good for the genetic diversity, right? So they're saying that it would have been better if India would have introduced sort of Asiatic cheetahs. Now, what should be the way forward for the Project Cheetah? What can be the way forward? See, first is improvement of the health monitoring. We need to have proper health checkups for these cheetahs, and we need to have effective mechanisms so that there can be timely interventions when there are health issues, right? Next is strengthening collaboration. We have sort of called these cheetahs from the two countries of Namibia and South Africa. So there needs to be more international collaboration so that we can share the best practices, we can share the knowledge. Next is coordination with other countries. As I said, we need to have proper mechanisms in place, for example, with South Africa or with Namibia, so that we can learn from their experiences and then carry out effective policies. Then long-term monitoring plans. We need to have long-term monitoring plans in place so that we can see what are the sort of movements of cheetahs, what has been the project, we can evaluate the project, what has been the success of the project, right? Next, we need to have community-based conservation. See, community plays the most important role because it is the one who is at the ground, right? Definitely scientific inputs are needed, but we need to incorporate the views of the community at large. Moreover, for these, for example, the economic opportunities, which I just talked about, for example, ecotourism or wildlife tourism, they need to be incorporated so that they need to be included so that they can also have the economic benefits. So what we see is that definitely this reintroduction plan, as I said, that it is the world's first intercontinental sort of translocation project. So it becomes really important for India to see that the health and the sort of overall well-being of these cheetahs is maintained, and it should sort of employ scientific inputs or make sure that there are different mechanisms in place so as to ensure the health of these cheetahs, right? So we can have these mechanisms in place so as to ensure that yes, the project is successful, and then it can be sort of replicated to other animals as well, right? So that is what you need to know about the Project Cheetah. Now, before we go to the next topic, there's a 2012 previous year's question. So it says consider the following: black-necked crane, cheetah, flying squirrel, snow leopard. Which of the above are naturally found in India? Just post your answer in the comment section. So the next article is with respect to the Totaliser. So there was a recent incident where what we saw was that a particular candidate from a particular political party, he has actually engaged himself in the vendetta politics. That is, he has said to some of the voters that they should not come to him, and even if they're coming to him, they should have their snacks and go back, right? So what we see is that political representatives are the one who represent all people at large, right? They are not the representatives of particular section in that particular constituency. So this becomes important. And in order to get rid of this problem, we have the mechanism of Totaliser. So this is with respect to GS2 election salient features and the Representation of People's Act. Now, the very important concept is the secrecy of ballot. Why this is important? See, every voter should have this secrecy of ballot. It is so that he can freely cast his vote without having undue influence, right? So that he can exercise his choice properly. Also, we have got, and what we say is that it is the cornerstone of free and fair elections. That is, if you are maintaining the secrecy of ballot, it would ensure that you are having free and fair elections. Also, we have got section 94 of the Representation of People's Act 1951. Now, this upholds the privilege which is granted to the voter when it comes to the secrecy of ballot, so that there can be proper free and fair elections, so that there is no undue influence on the voter. Now, when the violation of this secrecy of ballot takes place, what we have is that there is a fear of retribution or the promise of a reward. What it means is that if the particular representative, let's say a particular representative is contesting election and he wins the election, if he comes to know that people from certain area in a particular constituency, they didn't vote in favor of that person, right? So there can be retribution. There can be, as what we have observed in this case, right? Or if he knows that people from particular area in the constituency, they have voted, they have come and they have voted in huge numbers. So there can be a promise of reward. Now, both these things are not good for a well-functioning democracy. That is what we need to keep in mind. So also, we have got Rule 56 of the Conduct of Election Rules of 1961, which gives the power to the returning officer that if he finds out that there has been sort of maligned influence on the voter, then he also has the power to reject the ballot paper, right? Now, see, what also earlier there was a mechanism so as to make sure that the representative or the particular candidate who wins the election, he doesn't comes to know about it. So the mechanism was that the ballot papers from different areas in the constituencies were made to come at one place and then they were mixed, right? So the particular candidate was not aware that what has been the sort of vote share, right? People from which area have voted less and people from which area have voted more in his favor, right? But what we see is that with the institutionalization of the electronic voting machine, with the coming of electronic voting machine, this we cannot do. We cannot do the mixing, right? So we have got the data with respect to a particular booth, right? So we can have, the particular candidate can know that yes, from this booth, from this area, people have not voted for him. So there can be the case of vendetta politics. Now, what is the need? The need is to discourage the politics of vendetta or vote bargain, as I've just told. What can be a solution? The solution can be the Totaliser. Now, what is a Totaliser? Now, this is a mechanism which allows the votes to be counted together. That is, once you have got the casting of the vote, then votes are not counted and the display of the number of votes which a particular candidate has actually got, it is not done on a booth level basis. What we do is that there are a group of booths where the numbers are actually then told that yes, from these group of booths, we have got this number, right? Display is not on the basis of the booth level data, right? It is on the basis of group of different booths, right? Also, in the Yogesh Gupta versus Election Commission of India, the Supreme Court actually directed to the Election Commission of India that please come up with this idea. Make sure that you have got proper mechanisms in place so that you can actually start with this Totaliser. It said that the data with respect to the votes should be done on a parliamentary constituency basis. It should not be made on a booth basis, right? So the declaration of the result should be on the basis of parliamentary constituency basis. So then what happened is after a few months, the Election Commission, it also filed a counter affidavit and it said, and it reaffirmed its commitment to this order, to its sort of suggestion which was made by the court, to the direction which was made by the court. And it actually said that there needs to be an amendment in the rules so that we can have totalizer. Now, different political parties with time have agreed for this, but the government of the day, it's not in favor of actually implementing the totalizer. So in order to have a foolproof mechanism, in order to make sure that there is no politics of vendetta, there is no politics of retribution, there is no politics of bargain, we need to have this totalizer mechanism in place. Also, the Law Commission of India in its 255th report, it actually highlighted, it endorsed the Election Commission's sort of proposal to introduce the totalizer. Moreover, there was a writ petition filed in the Supreme Court in the Ashwani Kumar Upadhyay versus Union of India, where the petitioner actually said that there is a dire need to introduce the totalizer mechanism in the Indian elections. Now, as I said, the matter remains dormant since March 2018. And again, as we started the discussion, that such incidents, they happen because the candidate or the particular representative, he or she comes to know about the voting trends, and this is not good for a well-functioning democracy. So we need to have this mechanism in place so that we can ensure that there is free and fair conduct of elections. So the next article is with respect to the National Population Register. So what we recently saw was that a particular former census official, he said that there might be a possibility of the updation of the National Population Register in the 2025, right? So it can be done in 2025. Now, it is with respect to GSC, planning, mobilization of resources, growth and development. See, what is a National Population Register? First, see that. See, it is actually a database. It is a database which comprises of the list of the usual residents of the country. What do we mean by usual residents? Any person who has resided in the country for 6 months and who intends to reside for other 6 months or more time, he is actually deemed to be a usual resident. So it's not just about the citizen, it's about the resident. So just always remember this. Now, what is the objective? The objective of the National Population Register is to have a comprehensive identity database so that the government can actually identify that yes, we have got these people from these backgrounds, and we can then have proper economic policies for them, right? Now, the NPR was first collected in the year 2010, and then it was updated in 2015. And then what we see is that in March 2020, the Ministry of Home Affairs, it amended the census rules framed in 1990. And as of now, the government has a data, that is the updated list of National Population Register for more than 119 crore people, right? So just remember this. Now, what is the basis for the National Population Register? See, it is carried out under the provisions of the Citizenship Act of 1955 and the Citizenship Registration of Citizens and the Issue of National Identity Cards Rules 2003. Now, what is the significance of National Population Register? See, first is that it streamlines the data of residents across various platforms. We already know that the residents in India, they have got multiple ID cards, right? Let's say Aadhaar or voter ID cards. And in many of the cases, what we see is that there are different date of births or different addresses. Now, in order to come out from this problem, what we have is the streamlining of data through the National Population Register. So the National Population Register can provide with credible data. Next is it helps the government to formulate its policies better. Obviously, if the government has data with it, there can be data-backed policies intervention. For example, when it comes to a particular scheme, when it comes to socio-economic policies or poverty alleviation programs, government can have credible data with itself and then it can implement policies. Also, it is important for the national security. The government needs to have proper data when it comes to the citizens, when it comes to the residents, who is traveling the country, right? Who is staying here for how much time duration. So that is what the data the government needs to have. Next, it helps the government to target the government beneficiaries in a better way. So what we see is that we already have got the Aadhaar, and Aadhaar has tried to plug the loopholes which were there in the project implementation. But we need to have a proper identity mechanism in place, right? Which makes sure that there is less red tapeism involved, that there is proper identification and target the government can target the beneficiaries and then can actually give them the adequate resources. Then it helps in implementing the idea of one identity card. Now, this is very important. There is no need of having multiple identity cards. We have got the driving license, we have got the voter ID cards, then there is Aadhaar. We need to have a one nation, one identity card. That is what the government says, so that there can be a proper implementation of the government policies. Proper target mechanism can be there. So this is what you need to know about the National Population Register. Now, coming to the prelims section, we have got the first article as Project Nexus. See, what we actually see is that different countries have different fast payment systems. For example, India has unified payment interface for making transactions. So different countries have that. Now, in order to have efficient transaction mechanisms from one country to the other, there is the Bank for International Settlement, which has come up with the idea of Project Nexus. Now, this is conceptualized by the innovation hub of the Bank for International Settlement, and it is nothing but a multilateral international initiative to enable instant cross-border retail payments by interlinking the domestic fast payment systems. I have just told you that, for example, we have got India's Unified Payment Interface, UPI, right? So that is India's system. Then we have got countries like Malaysia or Singapore. They have their own domestic fast payment system. So there needs to be a proper integration of these systems. That is the reason we have got Project Nexus. Now, in this project, RBI has partnered with Bank for International Settlements, and other countries, central banks have also come on board. For example, we have got the countries of ASEAN, Singapore, Malaysia, right? So India's UPI and the fast payment system of Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, they will be interlinked through the Nexus. Now, this is a multilateral approach. Now, this would obviously give benefit to India's own system of UPI. See, if you have got more coordination with respect to the transactions taking place internationally, it would definitely give an edge to the India's sort of UPI mechanism. So it would give impetus to the RBI efforts. Now, according to the Bank for International Settlements, connecting these instant payment systems would to each other can enable cross-border payments from the center to the recipient just within 60 seconds. So if you have got proper mechanisms in place, there can be very fast transactions which can take place. Then Project Nexus is designed to standardize the way the instant payment systems work, connect to each other. So a single connection would be needed. It's not like that different countries need to have different bilateral mechanisms in place. We just have a single project, and that would help to integrate all the fast payment systems of different countries. So Project Nexus aims to connect the fast payment systems of 4 ASEAN countries, which we have just seen. Coming to the next topic, it is with respect to the deep brain stimulation. So recently, what we saw was that a teenager who was suffering from epilepsy, he has been implanted with a deep brain stimulator, right? So what is deep brain stimulation? First, let's see what epilepsy is all about. So it is nothing but a brain related disease which has indications in the form of sudden jerk of the legs and the hands, right? So this epilepsy can be actually treated with surgery also, but then we have got other mechanisms also. But right now, this is the first time that we have implanted a deep brain stimulator in the person's mind. So you can see we have got DBS device, then we have got the other parts of the brain, and you can see this is how it has been done. Now, as I said, the DBS works on a neurostimulation mechanism. That is, this machine, it sends electrical impulses to the brain to disrupt or block the abnormal seizure causing signals. So whenever a person is suffering from epilepsy or seizures with sudden jerk of the legs and the hands, so this, what it does is that it transmits electrical signals so as to stop those signals, which ultimately lead to sort of that person developing the epilepsy or seizures, right? Now, until now, so please understand that it's not like it's the first time that we are actually having this neurotransmitters. There have been neurotransmitters in before also, but these neurotransmitters were placed in the heart, and then you had a particular sort of wire connecting to the brain. But this is the first time that a neurotransmitter has been specifically implanted in the brain. Right. So what the doctors are saying is that surgery is still a preferable option than implanting a DBS device because of the cost involved. So the cost of having a surgery is quite lesser than implanting a DBS implant. Right. So currently the DBS devices are available in the market, reduce the seizures by around 40%. Also, this is the other reason that the effectivity of surgery is more. The efficacy of the surgery is more when you compare it with the DBS implantations, right? So this is what you know about the deep brain sort of stimulation. Talking about the next topic, it is Project 75I. Now, this is with respect to the indigenous construction of 6 Calvary class diesel electric attack submarines. Sometimes UPSC is in the habit of asking what this project is all about, so have a general idea about it, right? Now, the most important, see, initially we had the Project 75, and then we have this Project 75I. Now, this I signifies the indigenous component, right? So it signifies that most of these parts are being indigenously produced. The most important improvement of over its predecessor, that is Project 75, is the air independent propulsion system which it has. So we have the air independent propulsion system in the Project 75I submarines, which actually makes the submarines more sort of effective than the last submarines. Now the number of 75 in the Project 75 relates to a unique identifier which is for the Scorpion class. So this number 75, it is actually related to the Scorpion class submarines. Now what are the features of Project 75I? First, it has stealth features. It can actually hide its presence in the oceans, in the seas, right? So it has advanced acoustic absorption techniques, then it has low radiated noise levels, then it has long range guided torpedoes, right? Moreover, what we see is that the indigenization content or the component has been increasing from 45% to the 60%. So the target is to have at least 60% of all the components which are indigenously manufactured. Then it would also lead to the sort of impetus to the MSME industries, because many of these components for the project, they are being sourced from the MSME industries, right? Then the size. So the size of these, the number of submarines which are actually being made in the Project 75I is more than what its predecessors made. That is Project 75, right? So this is just basic information which you need to know about Project 75I. Now, finally, we have got the National Mineral Development Corporation. So the National Mineral Development Corporation is an Indian public sector unit, and it is involved in the exploration of iron ore, copper, tungsten. Then we have got tin, diamond, graphite, coal, right? What you need to remember is that it is the largest iron ore producer, and it's the largest exporter. Now, it is producing more than 35 million tons of the iron ore from 3 mechanized mines in Chhattisgarh and Karnataka. Also, it is the only, it operates the only mechanized sort of diamond mine in the country at Panna. Now, this is in Madhya Pradesh. Now, what are the operating mines of NMDC? The first is Baladela iron ore mine, which is obviously in Chhattisgarh. Then you've got the second complex. First is the Kirandul complex. The second is Bacheli complex. So, both are in the Chhattisgarh. Then we have got Doni Malai iron ore. Now this is in Karnataka. Remember this. Finally, we have got the diamond mining project, which is in Panna, that is Madhya Pradesh. So this is what you need to know about the NMDC. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. All the best.